And I feel like that is like the thesis statement of this video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Just Another Struggling Writer, the Beleaguered Author's one-stop shop for commiseration and hopefully inspiration. My name is Carrie Scher, and I am just another struggling writer. Well, today I am reflecting on the process of the first draft and thinking specifically about what I learned from it and what I can take into the new draft. So without further ado, here are 5 things I learned from my first draft. And the first one is for my fellow plotters and planners out there, those writers of us who cannot go into the first draft without at least an outline in hand. And in that regard, the first lesson I learned is, as much as we'd like to believe otherwise, you simply cannot plan for everything. I spent about 4 months planning, world building, outlining, re-outlining, thinking about characters, trying to build the magic system. I had made 2 drafts of the outline, and still, even taking into account all that, plenty of things came up in the draft that I simply did not think about when I was outlining. And some of things that, I feel kind of silly for not thinking about, like my main character surely would meet other people inside this government agency beyond her handler and her trainer and her boss. I had to think about who was actually going to be onboarding her, who was going to be telling her about the history of this agency and the magic, who was going to be helping her acclimatize to that. Surely she has other friends. Things like that I wasn't really thinking about in the outline. I was so laser focused on the plot and how I was moving for each plot point. So when I got into the draft, it occurred to me that there should be more to this secret government agency than just the points she touches for the plot. So I had to invent some stuff on the fly, and I got some really good stuff in there that is carrying over to the new draft. So it is what it is. Sometimes you just can't plan for everything that you will need in a draft. And it's so funny because I have always thought that some of my best ideas have come from being in the weeds, and this just proved it. But to that point, you don't want to over plan either. You don't want to spend so much time world building and planning and outlining that you never give yourself the chance to start. You have to accept that there are things that are going to come up in the draft that you didn't account for. Your character is sometimes going to behave like they have a mind of their own and they're going to veer off course, and you just have to be okay with that. You cannot waste time and energy and effort trying to plan for every single detail. If you're getting that bogged down, then you're ready to start, whether you've realized it or not. If you are over-analyzing to that level, do yourself a favor and just get started. Point number 2, which kind of builds off the previous point, which is you have to be open to new ideas as they come, even if they don't outline with your original vision. Because as you write, you're going to get lots of new ideas that suddenly spring into life of their own accord. Some of them are going to be awesome and you're going to be so excited to implement them, but some of them you may think are counterintuitive to what your original plot was going to be. I was recently looking at my first draft outline, and all the way up until I wrote the actual scene, there was one particular plot point and character who was associated with someone else at the agency, and that person was bringing my main character to visit them. But right before I started drafting that scene, I realized it needed to be someone connected to the main character instead. It just made way more sense that way. So all along, up until that point, I had a very specific vision of how the scene was going to go, and I had to just accept that in this moment, it needed to be this way instead. And part of me still misses that aspect of the original idea in the first draft outline. But the more I've written the story and developed it, I realize that it doesn't fit here anymore. But that being said, it's also important to understand that just because you've written it in a first draft doesn't mean you're married to it. If you feel like something you've written, something that came up and you just kind of ran with and it backed you into a corner, feel free to revise it out later. There's nothing stopping you from changing it. I guess the point is be open and not necessarily completely committed to everything that's in the first draft. Another thing to consider with this point is that by indulging in your creative whims this way, you're probably going to overshoot your word count by quite a bit. But that's okay. I am a firm believer in having more material than you need. And trust me, I am an underwriter. I have a big problem with thinking so closely about the plot that I ignore everything else, like I just mentioned. But I also think that having way more to edit out is a good thing, so you're not scrambling for new ideas when your creative well might be dry to add in and make it fluffy. Point number 3, and this is one that I have mentioned before, and it was really a revelation to me when it occurred to me, and that is the best sentence you can possibly write is the one that moves you forward. I know, we're all writers. We all want to believe that we are capable of the most beautiful, perfect, flowery, lovely, evocative sentences possible. But when you're in a first draft, none of that really matters. What matters is getting to the next sentence so you can write that one and the next and the next and the next and building on that momentum so that you can get to the end and then revise and build those flowery sentences that you know you're capable of. There were times when I was in the middle of my draft and I would think of something to say and it didn't really feel right. It didn't feel like it was saying what I needed it to say. It didn't feel like it didn't have the right flow. It felt clunky. I would sit and ponder it. What is the best way to say what I'm trying to say? What is the best way to get this message across? And sometimes an idea would come to me and I would write it and I would move on. But there were moments where I couldn't think of anything else. And it would be really irritating, like, ugh, I don't want to write this sentence this way. I just don't. But I realized that I was wasting too much time thinking that way. Eventually, I learned to just go ahead and write the bad sentence and move on. Because again, the first draft isn't about being pretty or evocative or making you feel good as a writer. It's about getting done. You can always revise. And I feel like that is like the thesis statement of this video. You can always revise, but it has to exist first. And so if you're getting hung up on the sentence level, do your best, because I know it can be hard, and try and let that go and just write whatever will get you to the next sentence. And this works in reverse too. If you've written a beautiful line, one that is punchy and smart and will really grab your readers in, but it also kind of backs you into a corner, that's not the right sentence for the moment. But that doesn't mean you have to get rid of it either. Personally, I keep a document of all of the cut content that I take out of the draft as I am working. So if I write a sentence and I love it and it's beautiful and it works, and then I realize that I can't really do anything else with it, or it has backed me into a corner that I can't find a way out of, I have to take it out. And what I do is I put it into this document and I save it for later. So that way, in revision, I can look at it again and see if there's a way to rework it or maybe put it somewhere else in the story. So that way I'm not losing that brilliant moment of creativity, but I'm just finding the right spot for it. Point number 4, and this goes out to all of my aspiring writer friends who, like me, have a day job and have a family to take care of and have other obligations that they need to be thinking about. That makes writing not always possible. And that is, some days just thinking about your draft counts as writing. I know one of the big pieces of author advice is to write every day. And that's nice and all, but it's not always feasible, especially for those of us who are working or have families and all of those other obligations. There are going to be days where you're sick. There are going to be days where you're at your nephew's birthday party or chaperoning a field trip or getting a new tattoo or just spending time with your family, holidays, vacations, days where you just don't fucking feel like it. And as much as some authors say that it's possible to squeeze in 15, 20 minutes of writing into those days, it's just not always the case. And so something I have learned is that when I am feeling mentally depleted or I'm too busy or it just isn't possible for me to get in front of my computer, as long as I am mentally engaging with the draft, thinking about the next scene, thinking about the next sentence, thinking about the implications of what's happening for later on and other characters, and thinking, how can I do this part? How can I do it better? How can I make this work? And staying engaged in the world of the story helps me feel connected to it in a way that isn't adding words to the draft, but still feels like writing to me, because I am still thinking really deeply and getting ideas and brainstorming even when I'm in the middle of the draft. If you are someone who, like me, struggles to maintain consistency because your life around you is non-standard in a way that you can't carve out a consistent time to write, my only advice would be to just think about it every day. When you're in the shower, think about the next sentence. When you're dropping your kids off at daycare, be thinking about where you left off on your last writing session. When you're doing dishes or doing the school run or anything, as long as you're thinking about it and staying engaged, you'll feel a connection to your story in a way that is almost as good as actually writing words. Now, if you do end up feeling like you've lost your connection to your story, trust me, it sucks. I've been there at least twice over the course of my first draft. But even if you lose that connection, it doesn't mean that you should give up on the idea. It doesn't mean that it's not the right project for the moment. It just means you need to take a little bit of time to immerse yourself back into that world. Just reviewing what you've written so far, or taking some revision notes, or something I always recommend doing, which is maybe trying some writing exercises like drabbles using your characters, something that'll get you back into the headspace. That can reforge that broken connection and get you excited and motivated to get back in and start drafting again. That's something I had to do a couple of times because there were mental slumps and energy levels dropping and sickness and things that ended up prolonging periods of time where I was not writing. And there were moments where I thought, I just don't have it. I can't do it. This isn't the right time. I should think about something else. But I didn't. I got back into it. Sometimes it took concentrated effort, but I ended up doing it and pushing through to the end. And I think you can too if you're feeling that way. And then finally, number 5, success is addicting. I'll tell you what, every time I hit a milestone, and that's either a big word count number or a plot point target, I felt exhilarated. I felt so excited. I felt powerful. I felt smart. I felt so empowered to keep going that often was all I needed to juice myself up for the next writing session. Nothing more exemplifies this than when I finished the first draft. I had honestly thought about taking a little bit of time off to let it sit in my headspace and percolate a little bit while I thought over my revision plan. But pretty much the next day after I finished the draft, I was already excited to start doing my postmortem outline and start thinking about how I wanted to implement revisions. I was so high off of writing to be continued that it completely refilled my well of energy and excitement for the project. While I certainly don't decry taking a break if that's what you feel like you need, I ended up feeling the opposite. I felt like I don't want to take a break. In fact, I was worried that if I took a break, I wouldn't feel the same level of energy and motivation and excitement about the project anymore. So I decided to keep going with it because I wanted to taste that high again. I wanted to finish a second draft and then a third. I want to query. I want to get those writing wins, and soon, because this felt incredible. And moreover, it wasn't just my wins that was motivating to me. It was also sharing those wins with the community and being a part of other people's wins. I'll tell you what, anytime I was in a live stream hosted by someone in the community and someone would post that they wrote 800 words in a session, I wasn't jealous or thinking, ugh, I could never do that. I was thinking, why can't I do that? I can do that. I'm going to do that next session. I'm going to keep going. Anytime an author tuber I admire would post a video saying that they finished a draft, or that they were sending out query letters, or that they were landed on a really great revision idea, or they had just gotten a new idea, I was motivated in my own project to get all of those things as well. When someone else in the community that you admire and care about slays one of their own creative dragons, to me, it's more fuel on the fire of passion and energy and drive to slay that dragon for myself as well. And that's why I think the biggest lesson from the first draft is to share it with others. Writing can be so solitary sometimes. You're in your office or at your desk, wherever you write, often on your own, a lot of times even without the company of music playing, because I know I can't listen to anything with words. It just is too distracting. And it could be isolating. You're talking essentially to the people you made up in your own head. And even if you share that with like your partner or your friends, if they aren't also writers, it can be difficult to feel like you're understood. So having a community out there that has been so supportive and so wonderful and so present throughout this journey has been the biggest revelation of writing this first draft. I said it in the drafting video and I said it in my May writing wrap up. I could not have gotten this far without the community. And that is true 1,000 times over. And I'm really counting on you guys to get me through this next challenge of draft 2. So that is my 5 things I learned from my first draft. If you're toiling through your own first draft, you're not alone. I hope these tips were useful to you. And please feel free to reach out if you need an extra boost of motivation, because I am more than happy to give it. With that, thank you so much for watching. I so appreciate it. If you like my content and want to support the channel, please like and subscribe or consider leaving a comment down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave me like a hand emoji with the 5 up for my 5 things I learned from the first draft. In my next video, I will have a writing vlog for you, one that has a little bit of a surprise in it. I hope you look forward to it, and I will see you then. Bye.